in that every document that is written actually has 5 aspects that you can look at separately. You can look at content. You can look at discourse, the linking, the cohesion, the structure. You can look at sentence level grammar and vocabulary. And you can look at formatting. And instead of correcting everything and changing everything for your students, or instead of your supervisor doing it for that, you could ask your supervisor, could you give me feedback in this category? Or in all the categories. But you could just focus on one category. So that's part of maybe you've done a level 2 document that still needs a lot of work. But you might say to your supervisor, today, can you give me feedback just in the content category? Or tomorrow, can you give me feedback in terms of the voice? Or feedback in terms of this, or the grammar, or the whatever. So it's not all at once. So this is another sheet, like a feedback sheet that you can give to your supervisor where you've written your name, the title, who you are asking for feedback, the date received and the date to be returned. Again, a good thing to negotiate. And then, what are you looking at, want them to look at? Everything or one aspect? And then they can also make comments. I would put it in a nicer format than that, in a bigger page, so they've got lots of space. And then, actions recommended. This is also from a book by a lady called Margaret Cargill, back in 2007. So this is also a very useful tool to use. Okay, writing and explicitness. Here is the supervisor again. I love these cartoons because they always have Professor Smith, who is this nasty supervisor. Okay. So what is Professor Smith saying? The purpose of a PhD is for you to become an independent scholar. If I tell you what to do all the time, it defeats the purpose. Professor Smith is trying to build independence. So the student says, so I can do whatever I want? No, you still have to do what I say. But you won't tell me what that is. That's on purpose. Is being confused on purpose? Not all the time. Now, I've got a paper here. I didn't hand it out, but you can have it on your way out, that I wrote with a colleague of mine called Lilita Valatham a couple of years ago. And what we did was we were working with engineering supervisors, and we got them to, the students had their research proposals, and the supervisors gave feedback on the proposals. Then we characterized and categorized their feedback. We described the feedback, what is the different types and categories of feedback. Then we got those students to comment on how they experienced their supervisor's feedback. And then we wrote the paper. And what was for us fascinating, I'll just quote a little bit from the conclusion. The first thing that we found was, we thought that, because particularly like here at Free State University, you have a lot of offshore students who are off campus. And maybe you're working off campus, you're not here all the time. And we thought, oh, written feedback is just not good. Students don't like it. But we actually found, first of all, that the students really liked the written feedback from their supervisors on the document, and that they really felt it helped them scaffold their research skills. However, we felt that that written feedback, the students said, always needed to be accompanied by follow-up discussions. So that's why we think these kind of things, like these tools, are really, really useful. For example, for the student to conceptualize and then you discuss. Or you give them the feedback and then you discuss. But when the students were just getting the feedback, sometimes they were experiencing it very negatively. So for example, one supervisor wrote everywhere, "No!" exclamation mark and things like that, and the student felt very upset. Okay, but when they actually discussed it, it was quite fine. All right. The other thing that we found quite unusually is that people really wanted explicit feedback. some of the feedback that my colleague and I had thought was really quite harsh, the student actually experienced it quite positively. Whereas the supervisors that were hedging and saying, perhaps you could do this here, or maybe this might be more interesting like that, the students were actually experiencing it quite hostilely and feeling, I don't know what to do. I feel so insecure and uncomfortable. Can't they be direct? Okay, so what we saw was the directness needs to be in the written, not rude, not no exclamation mark, but directly. This is wrong because. This can be changed because. All right? But then followed up with a face-to-face discussion where you can have more of the relationship and so forth. And that we really felt they like this scaffolded, process-driven discourse. They like to focus on practical things. Big theoretical whatever doesn't work in giving feedback on writing. Those are intellectual discussions that you can have away from the writing. And then look at how is that manifested in the writing. Because otherwise students just feel lost. It needs to be very practical, very processed when you're giving written feedback on writing. And as I say, as a student, what you need to do is to try and see how can I, if they are giving these big feedback, how can I translate that into practical, step-by-step, what need I to fix up. So that was very interesting, just in our findings on that issue. And you can read the paper if you like. So, how do you build that feedback, give good feedback, but still build autonomy for the students? Things like that paper preparation tool. Then the students think ahead of time, or the research proposal, 20 questions. I also have another one, and I'm afraid I didn't print it out, but I'll also give it to Henriette and Co that they can put it up. I have a research proposal assessment matrix that describes all the elements in the research proposal. And instead of then saying to the student it's all wrong or right, you just tick those boxes and try and answer on that. And then discuss it. Or give the student someone else's research proposal to mark using the matrix. But the one that having the cover sheets for the written work, explaining what elements you want marked, what stage the document is at. So like this one, developed by Cadman and Cargill. It's a planning draft, it's a review draft, or it's a final draft. So each other know. But also, I'll pass around this one. This one is the Thesis assessment matrix that I've developed also with a colleague over a number of years. This is a tool that you can use with students or with other people to look at your thesis when it's at the almost completion stage and try and see, is this thesis actually, just pass one to the back, is this thesis actually of a suitable standard? And you can also use it to self-assess. It's generic, so it's across disciplines, but it's based on John Willison's Researcher Skills Development Framework. And he developed this framework to look at all researchers, from someone in their first year, starting to learn things that we wouldn't even say are research skills, to someone who's got a Nobel Prize. And I've taken some elements of it to look at the thesis. So you can see across the top is the level. And you can see level 3, which is almost a fail for a thesis, is research is conducted independently at the level of a closed inquiry. So there's nothing wrong with that, but at a master's or a PhD level, you should be higher than that. Whereas level 4 is the MPhil or the honours threshold. You should get to that stage as an MPhil or an honours. Research is conducted at the level of an open inquiry within self-determined guidelines in line with the discipline. At a PhD, you should have an open inquiry within self-determined guidelines in line with the discipline. And at the excellence level, you are informing other people's agendas. But we look at different aspects. So we have embark. How do the people look at their literature review? How do they decide? What is their research questions? How do they formulate the importance of their projects? The find generate is their methodology. Evaluate is the data and all the processes for the data. Organize is how the whole thing is organized and put together. Synthesize and apply new knowledge. This is the key element. And that's why it's in bold, and I've got the little star. That if we look at there, that for a PhD, you should have information and analysis of information is rigorous and displays expertise, experience, and knowledge of the field. A distinct contribution is made to the field, and the substance of the thesis is worthy of publication. You say this to your student, do you think you fit all these things now? If not, how can we build? What can we do to achieve that? And then, of course, we've got the communicate aspect, which is all the grammar, writing, and all of that. But do you see, to pass, and that's why I say we're never going to be perfect, but to pass a thesis, we say appropriate headings, spacing, document formatting, reference list follows a discipline-appropriate convention, in-text references are consistent, accurate with a variety of expression, the student's voice is persuasive, so we are persuaded, okay? Some minor systematic errors occur, but these could easily be corrected with more careful editing. So you can still pass and make a few mistakes, right? So remember, it's not perfection, right? But where are you at? Is it something that could be published, that has the potential to be published? Where are you at? And it's really good in writing groups who've got more than one candidate. Let them try and evaluate each other's and then say what? Why doesn't it meet this criteria? Where could they improve? Where could they, to try and have a more holistic thing, because when we're looking at writing, we become so bogged down in the detail. So this kind of self-assessment tool can also help you a lot. And what I want you to think when you're looking at supervision, you can go and look back home at yourself at the cartoons again and think, as a student or as a supervisor, which people can help me address that problem? So maybe the time management people, who can help me with that? Are there people maybe here in the counseling services that could help me with my time management? Or maybe with my grammar, who are they can help me with that? Who can help me with structuring my documents? Help my students? As a supervisor, you can't be everything to your students. You can't fix everything with their writing. Maybe there's someone with better expertise in some aspects. Who can I refer them to? What skills training can I send my student for? The student's formatting is rubbish. Maybe I need to send them to IT training. Maybe I need to send my student for Mandalay training so their citations are nice. Maybe I need to send my student to the subject librarian to improve their searching strategies. And then what resources do I have? Things like these lovely books that I can draw on and use. Is there something else on the website? Is there materials that I have? Is there something on writing that I've used many times? What resources? And if you're the student, ask your supervisor for that. Don't expect your supervisor to be everything. Say to your supervisor, who would you recommend? What training would you recommend in this aspect or that aspect? So people, skills training, and resources. We all need more than our supervisor. Our supervisor cannot be everything for us. Now, irrespective of what type of student you are or what type of supervisor you are, you can be dependent or independent if you're a student. Or you can be a supervisor who fosters dependence or independence. So for example, you could take a functional role where where you focus on what gets done, but the student can be dependent. The student's waiting for the supervisor to tell them the next step, the next step, the next step. Or you tell your student, don't carry on until I tell you what to do next. You're focusing on the function, but you're fostering dependence. Or you can say to your student, right, give me your program. I need you to have these elements in it. Show me your program, show me how you're going to fit it in. Maybe you have a view of enculturation, trying to get the student to become part of the discipline. But if the student is dependent, the student says, what do we do in my discipline? What do we do in my discipline all the time? If you're fostering independence, you're teaching the student those skills that they can work out for themselves. So for example, the vocab, teaching them stuff like the corpus so they can build up the discipline vocab. Or what is the structure of the journal articles? You don't tell the students, you get them to go and look at 10 journal articles and look at the structure and work out for themselves in that discipline. Critical thinking. You can be dependent and still be a critical thinker because you think the way the supervisor wants to think, in what they think. But if you are a real independent critical thinker, you can critique your own work. And it's very good as a supervisor to tell the student, okay, you go and tell me what you think are the weaknesses in this piece of writing. I'm not happy with this paragraph. You try and find me 5 ways in which you think it's weak. Or whatever. So try and build that skill. Okay, you can be focused on emancipation, but you can be the student who's all the time saying, I want to be important, I want to be important, tell me I'm important. Or the student can decide where they want to go, what they want to do, where to find the information, and suggest to the supervisor even. Or you could be focused on relationship development, but where the student is all the time like a puppy, coming after the supervisor for approval. Or the student can sometimes has, I can never say that word, reciprocity. Reciprocity. I've been so excited in times where a student has said to me, Michelle, have you seen, because I work so cross-disciplinarily, have you seen that article or that new journal? And that's wonderful. Or if I achieve something, my student says to me, well done, Michelle, just as I say to them. So the thing is, you're working as colleagues, and as students, don't feel ashamed to congratulate your supervisor or to give them advice too, because you are a colleague, right? You're not, and you also have the right to say no. You know, your supervisor says, please organize this conference for me. You might want to do it and be happy, or you might not have the time. And you need to be able to learn to say no because you're being a colleague. And say, well, I really need to spend more time on my writing this month, or whatever. So whatever you do, you've got to develop that independence, particularly with your writing. But supervisors, this is what, and you cannot let your students do this, and students, you cannot do this. What's wrong? I've no idea what to do next to my research. If I ask Professor Smith for help, he'll think I'm an idiot. But if I don't ask him for help, he'll think I've been slacking off all week. So what are you going to do? Avoid him altogether, and hopefully he'll forget I exist. That is the biggest danger, right? So even if you're just doing a table of contents, even if you're just doing one small thing, meet, talk, carry on, even if it's on Skype or if it's an email, back and forth, but continue to work, right, on your writing.